I'm Tom Coughlin, and I'm going to do the third of three lectures, or three discussions anyway, on consulting business. And I want to thank you all for joining us again. And you've seen this before. Basically, I've been an active IEEE volunteer, and I've also worked consultant for over 20 years. My field is in digital storage and memory and applications. And this is in all the other slide decks, so you guys have seen this before. And this is the third of our classes that we're doing here. So the first one was on why do consulting and getting started as a consultant. The second lesson was running your consultant business. And this is the third one, in our final talk is going to be consulting best practices, and also some discussion of my personal experiences just to share with you folks. So with regard to consulting and best practices, part of it is letting other people know what you do, publicity, contracts and statement of work, making it clear what the job is and what your agreements are with the client, consulting and ethics, some discussion of that, and then get into how, just like life in general, every consulting path is unique. How people get into it, what they end up doing, is very unique. And just to give an idea of that, I'll share with you some information about my consulting story, and then some conclusions, and then finally I'll have some reference materials that might be useful to you in the future. I gave a little bit of stuff in some of the prior slide decks, but this will be kind of a compendium of things that may be useful to you. So, very important thing about consulting or any other kind of work is for people to know that you're doing it. Okay. And so publicity and be able to do outreach and communicating with other people are an important element of that. Now, maybe old school, but items you might need include business cards, perhaps your own website or a web page about your services on a consultant's website. So you need to have some online presence. You may also, do stuff on social media, perhaps a LinkedIn profile, things of that sort. Especially some of the more professional-oriented social media, like LinkedIn, probably a good thing to have. Maybe you want to make a flyer about services that you offer and find ways to distribute them. Back when we could go to events, you may want to attend trade shows, maybe even virtual shows, IEEE meetings, and other events to find out what help people need and let them know what you can do. And again, part of what's really interesting, this gives you excuse or permission just to get a hold of folks and find out what they do and the kind of things that they work on, and maybe you can find something between you and the person you're talking to that you might be able to help with. But just talking with people just for the sake of talking with them and making the connection is a good part of letting people know what you do. And then, of course, personal references. For one of the best ones is people who frequently use your services, that is repeat businesses, and will give good recommendations to other people that ask them about someone who does something like what you do, is one of the best tools for getting clients and projects. So a lot of this is about good relations with other people, being on the up and up, being seen as fair, being seen as willing to work with folks to help them to get done what they need to do to the extent as possible. And some more stuff on publicity, that sort of thing. You may, again, we talked before the website, but you may want to set up your business on key social networks like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, WeChat, whatever works for you and the community you're in. And when people do get a hold of you, try to be available and respond to serious inquiries and questions, because it directly lead to potential work. The IEEE USA, which I'm the past president of, even in India, I think you can become a member, post your profile. The annual fee for that is $99 US. If you're a good writer, if you like to write things, you're good at it, you may want to consider writing articles and topics that you know about, and letting other folks know what you do. It's something that I've done, as I'll talk about later. And if you a good speaker, you might want to offer to give talks in your fields of expertise and letting people know what you do. For instance, at your local IEEE section chapter meetings, an appropriate technical society chapter for the area you're in, you can volunteer to be a speaker. That's actually good experience, but also gives you some exposure. And both those together can be really good for your career. And when you write or give talks, be sure to publicize these with links to your social media connections. Let other people know what you're doing. Actually, I think I did a LinkedIn and also a tweet on these talks before we got started, these consultant talks. It will be useful to improve your writing and speaking skills as well as your soft skills in order to be successful working with others. And so writing and speaking is important characteristics, and also the soft skills, the things that uh, aren't the technical skills, but how to listen to people, how to talk with people, doing things like that. All of these are very important elements of being successful in working with others, including with clients or with other consultants or people that have information, skills, experience, tools, etc., that may be useful to you. So just to give an idea of some of the publicity, I live in Silicon Valley in San Jose, and we have a strong IEEE consultants network called the Consultants Network of Silicon Valley, or CNSV. And I'm a member and a board member, actually, at-large board member of the Consultants Network of Silicon Valley. It's part of the IEEE USA Consultants Network, and they have regular meetings with technical, tax, business presentations. They also have these special interest group meetings on various types of consulting and special technology topics. For instance, autonomous vehicles is one of the topics they had in this last year, where they'd have these SIG meetings, as well as perhaps an occasional speaker on topics like that. The CNSV also has web pages for member consultants that may help them get business. And I've got an example of that. This is my page there about Coughlin consultants and or Coughlin associates, and it's a short write-up with links on links on stuff, things you've done. For instance, in June 2008, I gave a talk at one of the CNSV dinner meetings about a book I wrote, but also gives some other background there. So you may have your own website, but you might also supplement that with things like this, or this could be uh, your publicity, depending upon your resources and your particular needs. So the CNSV site, individual consultants listed on the site are easily found with search engines, or you can find it directly on the CNSV site. The site is actually californiaconsultants.com, which is a pretty good URL. Members can put information on what they do and their background on the page you can see here in this example. And this could be, again, an alternative to having your own website, or could be something, another way for people to find you in addition to finding you on your own website. And by the way, if you do a website, and I'll talk to you a bit about that, try to get relatively frequent new content on there. Could be things you've written, stuff you've done, that sort of thing, because it helps to keep your site active and to be found. Now let's get into contracts and statements of work. So this is when you're actually talking to the clients, coming to an idea that you get an idea of talking to them on the phone or in person, whatever it is. Get an idea from them what they'd like to do, and if it's something that fits into your expertise, your skills and ability, then you're starting to come to some kind of an agreement with them. So you need to create this agreement. That's a contract, or maybe a statement of work. And to avoid issues during a project after it's completed, it's good to have a written record of what's to be done, how it is to be done, who owns or has what rights to any intellectual property, if appropriate, created during the project. And these things are important even when you're a consultant and a client or friends or have worked together in the past. In fact, at the bottom here, I say written agreements that anticipate possible issues and deal with them, and something that's fair that both parties agree to ahead of time helps friends to remain friends. And I have an extra remain friends there, but I guess it's important, so I have to emphasize it. And signed statements help both parties keep in line on what was agreed to be done, and when and for what cost. So it just makes things clearer later on, especially if you're doing some work that takes some time. It's good to think of these things ahead of time and get them get things agreed upon. So often these contract statement of work or work is often done with a simple statement of work, a work proposal, or with a more formal contract. And These should document, again, what was agreed to be done between the client and the consulting entity, how long the project could take, who's doing the work, what the client needs to provide the consultant in order for them to do the work, like information, um, uh, information or tools or samples, whatever it is, and what the consultant agrees to provide to the client. It should also make it clear that that the consultant controls the location and time of work and what rights the client and consultant have to any generated intellectual property. It could be, patents or trade secrets, many other things. It should also provide a means of resolving disputes between the client and the consultant and specify payment terms and due dates. These are important to set up ahead of time again. So when it comes time that you're wondering when you're going to get paid, you kind of have an idea on that. You can kind of just remind the client, by the way, it's coming up to one of those days. What's your plans? I need to work on my budget. And so what's your plans of paying me? Things of that sort to try to, you have a basis for asking for that. And that's given in this statement of work or a contract. Now here's a sample of a simple work proposal. And again, it's very simple. This one's just one page, but it doesn't say much. There's a lot of X's and things that aren't in there. So simple document one could modify to use for simple, fairly well-defined projects. It's easy to read, it's concise, can help get a more rapid response from the client versus a really long, complicated contract written by a lawyer, which you may need for some things, but may not be appropriate for others. For a longer term, more complicated project, or for one where there are potential liability issues, you need to have a more formal contract versus a simple statement of work like this. And a consulting agreement or contract is a written document which outlines the terms of a given service between a consultant and a client. And it's supposed to spell out expectations of the client and the consultant and contractor. And you can use this agreement to protect your interests and ensure that you get paid by the customer by outlining a formal written agreement on the services being provided in terms of payment. And a customer may choose to use a consulting agreement when hiring a contractor to protect company information through non-disclosure clauses, or they may have a separate non-disclosure agreement, which is actually quite common. What's included? Basic contact information for both the customer and service provider and the consultant, a clear description of the services provided by the consultant, including the duration of the agreement, terms about how much and when the customer will pay the consultant in exchange for services, and then a contract will also likely deal with confidentiality, non-solicitation, non-competition, as is appropriate, and also address who has ownership rights for the product or service supplied by the consultant. And there are various sources for contracting templates, and we'll give some of those in our reference slide at the very end of this talk. Sample contracts that you can download and modify for your own use, for example. Now let's get into sort of ethics, consulting and ethics, and treating others fairly is an important factor in business. People tend to work with people that they can trust and know will treat them fairly. I mean, there's some exceptions to this, but in general, people like to work with people that they like, or people that they feel that they can trust in what they do, and always try to see things from your client's point of view when you're in negotiations or talking with people, or you're just trying to see, are you getting done what they wanted you to do? Try to see what they're seeing may help you in doing that. Use this knowledge to come to a mutual agreement on things, particularly if you're not getting what they want. Make sure that you ask them questions, that you get it clarified. And the earlier you can do that, of course, the better you are. But whenever it comes up, it's a good idea to do that. And if a dispute comes up, it may be best to give a little bit in order to retain a relationship in future business. If something comes up or something unexpected or situation changes, it's good to be flexible in that it preserves a relationship for potentially future business. And moral principles are usually a good guide in how to behave with other people. Almost every set of moral principles basically says treat people nicely, and they're likely to do the same to you. And patience comes to those that wait, which is a phrase I used actually in the Volt training program that I've done for many years with IEEE. If you're an IEEE member, IEEE has a code of ethics that all IEEE members are supposed to follow. So I'll just go through this just to give an idea of that. So it says, we IEEE members of IEEE recognition of the importance of our technologies in affecting the quality of life throughout the world, accepting a personal obligation to our profession, its members, and the communities we serve, do hereby commit ourselves to the highest ethical professional conduct and agree to hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public, to strive to comply with ethical design and sustainable development practices, and to disclose promptly factors that might endanger the public or the environment, and to avoid real or perceived conflicts of interest whenever possible, and to disclose them to affected parties when they do exist, to be honest and realistic in stating claims or estimates based on available data, reject bribery in all forms, basically, be upright, um, to improve the understanding by individuals and society of the capabilities and societal implications of conventional and emerging technologies, including intelligent systems, to maintain and improve our technical competence, and to undertake technological tasks for others only if qualified by training or experience or after full disclosure of pertinent limitations, to seek, accept, and offer honest criticism of technical work, to acknowledge and correct errors, and to credit properly the contributions of others, to treat fairly all persons and to not engage in acts of discrimination based on race, religion, gender, disability, age, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, to avoid injuring others, their property, reputation, or employment by false or malicious action, and to assist colleagues and coworkers in their professional development and to support them in following this code of ethics. So basically, it's a lot like this is a lot like the moral principles of almost every religion or every society on the earth. It basically talks about how people could get along with each other by having realistic expectations and treating each other well. And now it's, we talked about a number of different factors here, and now we're going to get into things where it gets into, what's it going to be like to be a consultant? And your path will probably be unique. I think mine was, and many of the folks I know who've done consulting for a long time end up, some of them do the same stuff all the time. Some of them do a lot of different things. And every consultant who is successful develops their own path to success. The things that they end up being the signature activities that they do. And a lot of times you just kind of fall into these, or everything else you've done leads in some way to it, but it wasn't at all clear it would happen, except when it did. And what you can do is shaped by your experiences as well as your aspirations and efforts. And success can, of course, mean many things. Money's nice, but there's a lot of things about success or feeling that you've accomplished something that's non-monetary, that you did things, that you made a difference, um, that your life and efforts, actually contributed to other people, that you helped people, that people grew because you were in the world, and that they were able to get good things done, and that you were a part of making that possible. So these are, when you think about stuff, you earn money, but money should not be the sole object of what you do. In fact, money just enables you to do the things that you want to do anyway, in some regards, or should do anyway. And your education, training, experience are part of what you use as a consultant. But then there's new skills that you're going to learn along the way. What we learn in college, especially if it's in non-classical areas, emerging areas, is going to change enormously since then. So you need to learn new skills in that area, or perhaps adjacent skills. You may need to learn soft skills on how to work with people if you're not very good at that up front, which a lot of technology folks aren't, because we're kind of bookish and introverted. So you need to actually reach out to learn these things, these soft skills that can help you. And these skills are natural for some folks, but again, need to be developed over time and with persistence by others. So as an example of a consulting path, a particular one, probably a very unique, maybe odd one, I'd like to share some of my experiences. And so my consulting story from 1980, uh, when I graduated, got my master's degree, through the early 90s, I worked at companies making digital storage products, and I was doing engineering jobs and engineering management roles. And in the mid 90s, I started doing some consulting projects, and many involved hiring folks, building technical teams, doing development work. intensive technical customer development programs. And one of those consulting projects led to being hired by the company I was working with. And the idea was being hired with them, I'd get some stock in it and I'd be able to make oodles of money, the Silicon Valley dream. After starting in the late 1990s, I started doing market and technology reports and presentations, working with a longtime storage industry analyst. And I worked at engineering management companies from about 97 to 99. And then I got laid off from a startup company I was working at in 99. And I decided to go off on my own. I figured I could run a business as good as a lot of these guys could. And I also did some teaching and organized seminars as an adjunct professor at Santa Clara University in the late 1990s to early 2000s. And I started doing consulting work full time in 2000. And so continuing that story, my consulting works included a lot of different things over the last 20 years. I did technical due diligence projects for investors and digital storage companies, reviewed patent portfolios for clients, helped introduce storage systems, helping to and set up supply chains to actually launch some storage products. There was a nearline storage, one of the first nearline storage products using SATA drives or ATA drives at the time that I helped to get launched and set up supply chains for the products they needed. Published technical and market reports in digital storage technology and their applications. And I started some conferences, Storage Visions and Creative Storage conferences. Storage Visions was a companion event to the Consumer Electronics Show in January every year, and Creative Storage was one that I did for a while at the NAB, but then on its own. And I ran these conferences for more than 15 years. I was also chair of the Flash Memory Summit for 10 years. And with a colleague organized for several years, and it may still be going on. We've got to figure if we're going to do anything this year. It's going to be virtual. But we call them the Storage Valley Supper Club, where we'd have folks give some talks. People would meet and have a meal together. I've also organized events in storage and memory topics with several other folks. I've been an advisor to several startup companies. Haven't made my big win yet, but hey, there's still time. Served as an expert witness. And I write regular blogs and articles on digital storage and memory and their applications for Forbes.com. I also have a column called The Art of Storage with the IEEE Consumer Electronics magazine. And then I do blogs oftentimes after the media and entertainment events like the NAB show or the IBC. I'll write storage blogs, media and entertainment storage blogs for appropriate websites and other venues. I've done many webinars. I also have written white papers with companies, especially technical and market white papers on topics around digital storage and applications. A lot of that's been actually companies in the media and entertainment area. And I've done many webinars and presentations, posters at conferences on memory and digital storage and their applications. I wrote a book on digital storage and consumer electronics, first with the division of Elsevier and currently a second edition with Springer. And I also contributed chapters to several books on data storage and memory related topics and written papers for many magazines and professional journals. So those are some of the stuff that I've done. My connection to professional associations, though, and this is part of why I wanted to, and especially appropriate with IEEE, has helped a lot with my consulting career, I believe. And part of this is just getting the word out about who you are and developing a reputation. I was very involved with a group called IDEMA, which was a trade organization for the hard disk drive and hard disk drive component industry, and helped by chairing standards activities, giving talks at and helping to organize their international conferences. And I gave talks at conferences both in Silicon Valley, Singapore, Thailand, Penang, various places where I spoke with IDEMA talks, Japan also. I was a founding member of the Storage Networking Industry Association Solid State Storage Initiative, which just recently changed their name to Compute Memory and Storage Initiative, CMSI, partly due to hardware specific or application specific accelerator technologies being used for computational storage. They changed the name of the group, which is closely involved with solid state storage, so it changed its name to Compute Memory and Storage Initiative. And I've been a contributor at many of their conferences, and I'm a frequent webinar presenter, and I think I'm currently the vice president of training, or chair of vice president of training for that particular group. After publishing the first edition of my book and giving a tutorial at the 2008 International Conference on Consumer Electronics, an IEEE conference, I became a distinguished lecturer for the IEEE Consumer Electronics Society and spoke to IEEE groups on digital storage and consumer electronics all over the world, including in 2010 in Bangalore. So I have helped with events put on by SMPTE, the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, giving talks and presentations on my media and entertainment storage survey, and writing about SMPTE events and initiatives. And I think this sort of exposure, maybe demonstrates my interests, certainly maybe my knowledge and thoughts, and has helped me to create connections with potential clients, and also helped to raise my exposure to a broader audience overall. So when you're talking about storage, if you go type in Coughlin storage, you're going to come up with me. If you can get into a situation like that with what you do because of the things you do, it will help you in terms of job flow and having people want to talk with you and work with you, and maybe even give you some money. So I have a website, dedicated website, which I got early on so I could get it with my name, tomcoughlin.com, basically, where I talk about what I do, offer access to free articles I've written, and advertise market and technology reports. Also had a page in this website that I used for my IEEE USA presidential campaign. In addition, I have separate websites for the Storage Visions Creative Storage Conference and something called the Entertainment Storage Alliance. So just some examples of these reports and a newsletter that I do, a quarterly newsletter. Here's a report that finished up with June with a colleague, Jim Handy, Objective Analysis and ION, emerging memory technologies. I've actually been doing this report for several years, and the last few years with Jim, and talking about this latest one is emerging memories find their direction. These are things like magnetic random access memory, phase change memory, ferroelectric memory, resistive RAMs, different technologies that are non-volatile memories that may displace volatile memories like DRAM and SRAM are starting to make inroads, and could be especially important, for instance, MRAM, in embedded devices that are using machine learning inference to make decisions at the edge and at endpoints. These are situations where you don't have much power, maybe battery or harvested energy. And so having a low power memory could be an important use, just an example of that kind of thing. I also do a quarterly newsletter. And then on the far left there, this is a snippet of my website, the Tech Papers page that talks about various things, reports. I do a report on media and entertainment storage, as well as this emerging memory report, and I've done other reports as well. And of course, that newsletter. Do these articles and blogs. So the first two on the left there are Post Perspective and Broadcast Beat, which are media and entertainment websites. So I've done blogs for them on storage and media and entertainment. You can see examples of that there. My Forbes.com Storage Bytes blog is up in the far right there. And then The Art of Storage, my column for the Consumer Electronics magazine. There's an example of an article I wrote there on the lower right. I just wrote one actually, just finished writing the latest one there. I guess it's now in IEEE open access, I was told, which is let's build a holodeck. So might want to check that out. I also do public speaking of various sorts. Actually, in the upper right hand, I went and I found the Bangalore section website, and I found where an announcement of that, my giving that talk. So I guess in November of 2010, the Consumer Electronics Society chapter in Bangalore was established, and in December of that year, I gave a talk on digital storage and consumer electronics. And so that's part of that announcement there. I don't know if I was the first speaker, but I was probably the second speaker, if not the first there. I've also, I got a IEEE activity going on for recording local technical chapter meetings, and then IEEE TV has a place where individual members can upload content. So here's an example. This is actually a talk I gave on the memory of cars. Um, Lower left-hand side there, an IEEE TV, and that's still available. And actually, if you go to vTools, um, it's hard to find, but there's a place there where they talk about how you can upload things to this IEEE TV channel. Uh, I've also give talks on storage media entertainment. There's a local section meeting announcement here back a while ago. And let's see, Bright Talk, this is a SNEA, had these things. So here's a webcast talking about that we did, I believe it was, yeah, January 2020, Jim Handy and I did, talking about emerging memories, what's been going on there. Another talk, a fog edge computing thing with the Consumer Electronics Society. Actually, I think this is ICCE 2019. I gave a talk there. There's a guy, Silicon Valley here, who I gave an interview with. We talked about IEEE and digital twins, DNA storage, and other things. And then I've given talks. I'm actually one of the founders of the Rising Stars Conference in which has been in Las Vegas for the last few years, and one of the founders helped get it kicked off. Actually, I had it kicked off initially. As a side event to my Storage Visions conference. I mean, so I got space and I was able to find space for Rising Stars, and that was what was finally able to get that thing to happen. That was back for the first 3 years of Rising Stars existence. Conferences and events. I did the Storage Visions conference, for example. Um, and I was general chair of the Flash Memory Summit for 10 years. Creative Storage is another event. Storage Valley Supper Club is this thing I mentioned. We were going to do this one in March, but then COVID basically shut us down, so that one didn't happen. And then last year with a professor at Stanford, I had this emerging memory and artificial intelligence workshop that I did for a week there. Just another example of stuff I've done. So these are just giving you some of my own personal, path, things I've done consulting or done not consulting, but raises a profile and helps you to establish who you are and things you can do. And some conclusions here, and then again, I've got that reference page I'll show you. To be a successful consultant, you need to establish connections with potential clients. And that can be done in many ways. And that's kind of where you get into your own personal path of how you'll do that. Although there's certainly really good examples that you could get started with. And make sure that you understand what makes a good work proposal and contract. And use those to make strong connections and agreements, understanding with the people that you work with. Your consulting work should reflect the high level of ethical standards expected from a technical consultant, especially an IEEE member. And as can be seen from my example, everyone's consulting path will be different. You will come up with a whole different story. And actually, I'd love to compare stories with you sometime if you've got a good one. And consultants can play a useful and rewarding role in your career, whether you do it part-time or you can do it full-time. Whatever your career path ultimately happens to be. And then finally, here's some reference materials. IEEE USA has a number of webinars and ebooks, and here's some links for that. They also have Consultants Network in many cities, and I believe that you've got one there in Bangalore. And there's IEEE Consultant Exchange Collaborative Community. IEEE USA also has webinars and ebooks developing soft skills as part of those ebooks and things. There's a recorded webinar on contracts and contract provisions, other important aspects to consider it's a recorded webinar. The webinars are free, and at least right now, the IEEE ebooks are free for IEEE members. IEEE USA ebooks are free for IEEE members, so you want to get in there while that's the case and get some of these things. There's numerous resources for continuing education of various technical and non-technical topics available from the IEEE Learning Network, and members get discounts for these courses. And then there's resources for starting and running your business, include one that I've bought stuff from, Nolo Books. They're for U.S. legal entities, and of course the rules may be different in other countries, so you want to check on that. But here's Nolo Books. If that's useful to you, you might want to take a look. They have books on consulting and independent contractor agreements, on forming an LLC or corporation, business forms, and general small business bundle of documents and stuff. And simple contractor agreements are also available online, various places. Here's one for here, for example. So with that, I'm ready to do any questions if we have any from the folks that are on the call. Hello, folks.
Hey, sorry, Tom, I was speaking on mute. I think it was a great session. However, I would request the candidates or the participants to post any questions so that the Tom can address them. Or probably, I also feel that Tom, they can reach out to you as you have shared your email ID
Oh,
if
you
they
bet.
have any. Yeah.
Sure. No, I'd love to hear from anybody who's been on this call, especially given one that's people that are thousands of miles away. It's useful to connect up with folks and find out what they're doing.
So okay, so I do
By the
have
way,
an.
that picture that was my IEEE USA shirt that I last year when I was president of IEEE USA. We have this shirt, so it's got IEEE USA. It's tie dyed. On the back, it says "Technology for the Pursuit of Happiness," and that's Ramesh Nair, who has been a IEEE Santa Clara Valley volunteer. He's originally from India, and he's wearing the shirt too. So that was at a YP event down in San Diego.
That's really nice. So there is one question which says that is there any standards for costing the consulting work?
Wow. There's probably some example. It probably depends on the kind of work that's being done. There's examples out there. Um, I believe with the second talk, I gave some costing information. You know what the survey. There was a consultant survey, again, mostly in the U.S., but it was a consultant survey of how much people were charging, and again, based on their experience. But it also depends upon the kind of work being done. I think this is always a hard one where you kind of have to. It gets easier if you do it more, somewhat easier, but it's never totally easy because there's so many factors that go into what you should charge. Ideally, you charge what will bear because you can get the most money, but how do you figure that out, right? Um, so part of it might be, if you've got a local group of consultants, if they're willing, maybe do your own local survey, for instance, to find out what people are getting with a little bit of background on the people, like what's their level of education, how many years of experience they had. All those things going to play into how much you should charge or be paid. But sometimes, and I've been in that situation, you need the work, and you know uh, you will take any reasonable amount to get it. And I've done that in the past. When I've been in the situation, there's a lot of factors to get into it. But if you and so but on the other hand, you also want to maximize what you get out of it. So it's a complicated interplay to figure out what you should charge for an individual engagement.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for that response. I don't see any more questions from the participants for now. I think we can wrap the session. And once again, from IEEE Bangalore section and IEEE Consultants Network Bangalore chapter, we thank you for sparing your valuable time with us and sparing your providing insights on the technical things and also on the consulting path and sharing your inputs with us. So we would be wrapping up this sessions and note to all the participants, we would be uploading the recordings of the sessions on our IEEE Bangalore section YouTube channel, and we would be sharing also the slide decks which Tom has shared over the last three sessions to you all. Tom, any closing comments so that like we can wrap up with your closing notes for the day?
Oh, you bet. Well, it's been a real pleasure to get a chance to talk to folks from Bangalore. I've enjoyed visiting Bangalore in the past, and hopefully be able to again someday in the future here. And glad you guys have a consultants network there. I hope it's successful and that you have a whole group of folks who can go forward in terms of consulting in India and developing your own best practices and ways that you can help each other to be successful. I've enjoyed being part of the consultants network in Santa Clara Valley. There's a number of very active volunteers who have done great work to advance the profession and the consultants there. And I hope that your local chapter is able to do that in Bangalore. And it's been a real pleasure to interact with all of you. I hope the material I presented is of some assistance and help to you all, and to wish you well in your career.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, it's just few months ago that we have started Consultants Network Bangalore chapter, and we are keeping in the baby steps. So probably we will look forward to collaborate more with you in the coming days. And well, as you said, that if things eases out and the traveling becomes much more like older times, we would always like to have you personally in Bangalore and addressing us.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. Take care,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Yeah.